Namaste. So, when I saw the arrangement here, and Sethiji knows, I was a bit hesitant to speak here. So, let me tell you the secret. Though I've been saying it's about people, because we are right next to relics, and Sri Aurobindo's such a wonderful presence is here. So, when you are in the presence of the holiest of holy, you don't speak, you just remain silent and receive in silence. But then I remembered from something from the Upanishads. Kane Upanishad, he says, there the speech reaches not. Speech can only throw hints and suggestions, it doesn't reach there. And yet, and that is the saving grace, that from which the speech is born. So we can take it that if he inspires, if she inspires, that's the only way to speak about these scriptures. They were not born of analytical thought. When it is said that they are not rational, it means that they are supra-rational. Indian mind has always distinguished between the infra-rational, the rational and the supra-rational. We live in a bandwidth of rational thought. Rational thought moves on the surface of things. This is a chair, this is a table. How are they connected? That's made of plastic, this is wood, and something of the wood is there in our brain. That's why we say touch wood, etc., etc. We classify, we put together. That's rational thought. Its data is gathered from the outer senses. That's its limits. But way back, and as we just, Sitiji was reading from Sri Aurobindo, that even material science has reached that point where it is beginning to see the basic unity behind all these different appearances. What is the basic unity? The atomic substratum. But what it fails to understand is how these atoms came into existence. What created atoms and buttressed them together, and solid objects, the phenomenal world, the senses, all this is a wonderful science we find revealed in the Upanishads. But just to go a little backward, how or maybe going backward is to go forward sometimes, like the story of Daksh Prajapati. So, the earliest recorded spiritual thoughts, spiritual experiences, spiritual revelations, call it whatever, is no doubt the Vedic thought. Some people would say it is Zoroastrianism, and there has been, I'm not entering into these metaphysical, historical elements. If you read the typical Western historians, they would say that, everything has happened between 1500 to 2500 BC, because their world begins there. But there are plenty of evidence to tell us, to show us that Vedas are much, much, much before that. So that's one part of it, just because. And the Vedas themselves say, the rishis of the Vedas, they say that there were those who have gone before us, the forefathers. So that's not documented, but they say that we learned from them. Who were they? We don't know. They don't mention. No name is mentioned. So Vedas are the first recorded document. So they have recorded. And how was it how transmitted? By oral means. For a long time by oral means. Then it came to be, written. So this is a background of the Vedas. We know that there are 4 Vedas. There were 3 to begin with. Rig, which is the oldest. It consists of rigs, basically. All the mantras related to fire and invocations. Very profound experiences are enshrined there. Then you have the Yajur, which relates to Yajna, works. And we have the Psalm, which are hymns sung in praises, basically by and large. And then later on we had the Atharvaveda, which is about the various magics. We call them magic, but they had the ways, mantras, and how to deal with everyday life issues, cure of various ailments, etc., etc. It's about the occult aspect of creation. So these Vedas are known as apaurushaya. Apaurushaya means you have not really put an effort. What does it mean? It means that they flow as an effortless revelation to the seeking soul. This is what it means. Normally, if I have to do something, I have to put in effort. If I have to give a talk, people have to put effort. They have to, if you have to read something, I have to put effort. They have to put, after reading, I have to understand all this. But when there is a revelation, it comes as a result of seeking, and it contains within it the knowledge, the wisdom that is there. So it's like suddenly we have, for instance, just to give an instance, in Bhagavad Puran, there is the Akashvani. Now, who heard the Akashvani? Some people there heard. Now it contains within itself the entire, future in a way. Those who want to read it, it's not just about Krishna's birth and he will kill Kansa. It means that the old world is going to end, do it whatever you may. The old world which was centered around a few kingdoms, Kansa is one of them, Jarasandha is another. Why? Because Krishna is coming. The divine advent is going to take place. And all that belongs to an old way of life is going to collapse. It contains within itself a summary of the past and the future. So this is how these revelations occurred to the rishis. And they wrote them in a language which, it is called as the first, when you see a dawn, let us say, how do people, supposing somebody has never seen a morning, he suddenly got born in Antarctica during the dark phase. And for months he never saw anything like morning. He heard from his parents, one day they will be Subha Kabhi To Aayegi. And he is waiting. One day he sees the dawn. And if the child could speak that time, how would he explain? He may say just, wonder. Kya hai? Lal. He may say 100 words. And all these words are pointing towards one thing. With many aspects, the splendor of the morning. To some it is the morning which sun, to others poets will use it. And the poet says that the dawn will come. What is he referring to? Hope. When Shelley says if winter is near, spring is not far behind. Is he talking an inane, literal thing that we all know that yes, after winter, spring comes. What's the big deal? He is saying that if you are going through, it's about the cycles which follow one after another. He is talking of many things we all can understand now. That even in the darkest night prepared the greatest dawn. Just wait, learn to endure with hope and faith. So similarly we see in the Vedas, the language is cryptic. Cryptic to the crude mind. Somebody will be crude to say that, what is Shelley saying? He is saying something we all know. What is the big deal? Spring is going to come. Everybody knows about it. What is so poetic about it? But we all know that yes, the person who cannot see in it a profound truth is foolish. So this is what started happening with the Vedas over a period. I'm talking now coming to the Max Muller era. They remained like an extant scriptures. And this used to happen time to time. Vedas, it was difficult to understand because they were full of images, full of symbols. Ganga, Yamuna, Saraswati were about the, three streams which are within us. When it was said that, Sapta Sindhu and the rains that pour from heaven, Parjanya is pouring the rains. So they are not describing clouds are pouring rain. Somebody has to be foolish to, write clouds are pouring rain. It doesn't require rocket science to understand it. There is something more which we are missing. So, when he spoke about invocation of the sun, so do we really believe that they felt that by their prayer the sun is going to rise in the morning? No. They are talking about the sun as the source of all knowledge, all light in this creation. So the Vedic rishis knew very well what they are speaking, and those who were immediately around them knew what they are speaking. But as it happens, period of time passes, so there is a second layer which got added to the original writing. But though the second layer is also considered as part of the Vedas. And that second layer was Samhitas, Brahmanas, and of course Aranyaks and the Upanishads. I think there was a camp, so all this must have been discussed. But still, just to quickly summarize. So here we see that basically while the Samhitas about the songs and the Brahmanas took up the ritual parts. So we see Vedic rituals. So what were these rituals? I'll come to it a little later. They elaborated on the ritual part of they were embedded in the Vedas, they took out and they explained the rituals, described in great detail, which we see sometimes being practiced. And the Aranyaks, but much more so the Upanishads. Aranyaks have a mix. They elaborate upon the rituals, some of the mantras, and they also talk about the philosophical element. So some of the Aranyaks are regarded as the Upanishads. So what are the Upanishads? The Upanishads take up pure wisdom, the knowledge of what is there in the Vedas. So broadly speaking, we have two aspects of the Vedas. One is Jnana Kand and the other is Karma Kand. In the Vedas, they are intertwined with each other because they believed in the integrality of life. So when you read a Vedic hymn, it's like a person coming. So, how do you recognize? You recognize a person. Let's say Uday is coming and say, oh, Uday, my friend is coming. Upanishad said, no, don't. His body, dress, all this. No, that's not relevant. So what is relevant? I see a seeker who is brilliant, who is coming. So what has he done? He has taken out the essence of what the person is. Vedas describe the totality. They talk about the creation, they talk about earthly things, worldly things, and otherworldly, and the supraworldly, and the transcendent, everything together. And because this cosmos is interwoven, they weave it. So that's why they are the highest secret. But then human mind, it at some point wanted only the knowledge part, because they couldn't completely connect with the Karma Kand. So that became the Upanishads. And it has two meanings from where this whole thing comes. Veda means knowledge. And if you have to put it that what is that secret knowledge, we can say Upanishads. And it's also called as Vedanta, the end of knowledge. So some people believe or take it that Upanishad is greater than the Vedas. It's like I am ultimately shedding out all the apparently unimportant things. There is nothing unimportant about it, but we have lost the meaning. So apparently unimportant things, and I am only keeping the essential aspect. So it is a way to look at it, but they call it Vedanta. Ved comes knowledge, Vidya. So with Ved, knowledge. But what kind of knowledge? It is not any knowledge. In the Vedas and the Upanishads particularly, it is very clearly described there are two kinds of knowledge. There is a lower knowledge and a higher knowledge. So what does it mean? Is it a distinction or is it a way of looking at things? So lower knowledge is what deals with the divided sense through which we understand. This is a table, this composed of wood has come from there, etc., etc. It is a kind of knowledge, practical knowledge. It's important, it has its own place. But knowledge in the sense of the rishis is oneness. I must first know what is the essential fundamental element, the source from where wood and all the things have come, the man who is going to shape it. Now, what is the difference? Why should they try to know it? Because this knowledge can only be really understood if we know the original source. This was the whole fundamental doctrine. And it empowers you to any extent. Now you have things at the source, how the source became this. And the whole sense begins to change. Say, for instance, when we have a system of prasad. So somebody may say, but God has not eaten it. You're just having a belief. But what is the meaning behind prasad? So the meaning behind the prasad is that, it's not whether God has eaten it physically or not. God is in everything. He is everywhere. And I am only invoking His presence in this. And I am taking it with this faith that now it has been touched by God. Like a king, when he gives Nazrana, what does he do? He doesn't take, he just looks at it and then says, distribute it to the kingdom. So it becomes a Nazrana from the king. There is a similar thing in the Bible, a doctrine in Christianity which they've completely forgotten. It's the doctrine of transubstantiation. So what do? They base it on the Eucharist, the story of Christ. Why I'm saying is because, see, the yoga was everywhere, it got lost. But in India it was kept intact. So Christ, when he was going for crucifixion, He cuts a loaf of bread into different pieces and gives to people. And then he distributes the wine to everybody and says, this is my body, the bread, and the wine, this is my blood. Now you see, if somebody doesn't understand mystic truth, he will say, how grotesque, how crude, how vulgar. And if somebody is a vegetarian, he will feel shocked. But a mystic will completely understand because it's there. Even that's exactly how the Western world could never understand the Vedas. They had discarded their own mysticism, actually crucified Christ, literally, twice, and built a religion around it, forgot the mystic element in it. But we kept it, partly by faith, partly because mystics kept coming. We allowed this evolutionary dimension in Sanatana Dharma is the most marvelous thing, that we are not stuck to one book, one master. So we allow knowledge, remains fresh. New revelations come. So Vedas are not a book which are written and ended. Always there will be new revelations. Because why? Because the truth is infinite. That's precisely what it means. That you can't close it, shut it in one particular or 4 books. So Vedas had 2 senses when the rishis used it. One sense was, as we understand today, the Veda mantras as they are in the book. But Veda also meant the knowledge which is embedded in creation. It is embedded. How does the atom know that there should be? When I read physics, I was shocked that it needs in the outer layer 2 electrons or 8 electrons, otherwise it will become imbalanced. I said, who taught the electron? I am learning it. How did the electron know? And if we look at this world, we'll be fascinated by a conscious, there is nowhere, unconscious thing. Gene is an unconscious thing. But it builds human beings who are conscious. Today, genetics don't understand. They use the word evolutionary gap. We are trying to explain man and his consciousness based on genes which are themselves unconscious, and you go backward atoms, they are unconscious. So, but the Vedic rishis understood this. Now I'm coming to Upanishad. They discovered this formula and they declared Chetanas Chetananam. What does it mean? Even in the most unconscious element, there is consciousness embedded in it. Indirectly, we can see it, we can feel it, but we can't prove it. Because the behavior of an electron is not nowadays they speak about choices of the electron. But it's not a conscious choice. Electron is not saying, I want to go to the slit or this. That's a different, I'll not get into physics right now. But Chetanas Chetananam is a profound discovery. You may say, what's the big deal? What does it mean? How does it connect to us? So we must connect it to our own life. If there is consciousness in everything, how should I treat material objects? Should I treat it with disdain? Ye to materialism, matter hai, what has it got to do? This division which came later has been the bane of India. This is not how when you look at the ancient Indian civilization, we treated matter with respect. Why? Because there is consciousness in it. Because there is consciousness in it, there must be ways and means that I can awaken that consciousness within that jad. Why? Because there is nothing which is completely jad. There is chetan in it. That's how we have those mantra with the arrows. That's why we have the prana pratishtha. Why? Because consciousness is embedded in it. I can invoke Shiva out of it if I know the process, know the method. I can even convert one metal into another if I know the process. Why? Because ultimately there is oneness. So we understand the power of oneness. Very often we say that India gave to the world power of 0. Well, yes, but we also gave, much more importantly, the power of 1. This oneness is called knowledge in the Vedas. When we understand oneness and we understand the one within everything, call it by whatever name, it will be there. It doesn't matter. That is knowledge. All else is ignorance. Now, ignorance is not absence of knowledge. It is partial knowledge. From ignorance, you can't build oneness. But from the one, you can bring back, infer multiplicity. To give an example. So, there is this nice embossed image of in front of me, Shri Krishna and Arjun. Now, this is one image and I look at it and I connect with it. But from this, I can take out each element and describe the horses, what they mean, and I can write a treatise on horses, the reins, what it means metaphysically and physically. So I can take out a whole world. But if I just yoke horses and a lagam and put a person out there, because there is a person out there, and I put behind him one who is holding the lagam and the chariot is there, and I put in a man who has Dhanush Ban. That doesn't make this image. You have to know this image to derive this sense which today we are deriving. If you don't know this image, it is just another Rath and Sarthi. You say, yes, that's how people see Mahabharata. If supposing at the end of Mahabharata, BBC, CNN came and asked, sir, tell us about this, that, and okay, about Krishna, can you say a word? So what BBC would have reported? He was a Gwala who was driver of Arjun. That's correct. We would say silly. After all, BBC, jitni buddhi, utna. But what do we see? We don't see that. We see the Lord sitting there. Now, how do we see? With what eye we see? That's how the Vedic rishis proceeded. And they brought out this entire. So when we say Chetanas Chetnanam, now potential Krishna is in everyone, but here he is embodied. This is the difference. We too can discover Krishna within us. This is the practice of yoga. If every time I repeat to myself, Chetanas Chetananam, I will have no fear. Even in the most, deadliest of situations, what will I say? There is the one consciousness within it. See how beautifully this same truth is narrated in the story of Prahlad. So later on, the Puranas, they narrated the same truth. So what does Purana say? They don't go into mantras and elaborate metaphysical thought. It simply puts two gospels. One is Hiranyakashipu. He has all the outer way means of death he has mastered. Yet he dies. Because the incalculable, unknowable X factor is always operating in life. What has Prahlad done? He says one. That's all he knows. Wherever he is, one is there. Vishnu is there. Hari, 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 Hari. In the end, Hari is, he asks him, is he there in this material pillar? He says, yes, Hari is there. And Hari comes out, Hari saves him. So this one small little fraction of a sloka, it can transform our life. Actually, literally it can transform. Nityo Nityanam. I should not treat material objects with. Where did this Mayavad, all this came later on, which we'll talk about. Then another great truth they came. So this was Chetanas Chetananam. Nityo Nityanam. In everything that is transient, otherwise we become so pessimistic, no? Arey, to sab transient hai. We don't say angur khatte hain. We say transient. When something is taken away from us, we say transient. But otherwise we strive for it. But see how beautifully it says. It says, Nityo Nityanam. The one eternal in transient things. It changes the perspective. Yes, things are changing. It is a truth. We cannot deny it. There is change, which is something we see. But there is something unchanging within. So what is the relation? All these ever-changing things are essentially, they are the eternal who is behind them. It is He who is doing it. He is bringing out different aspects of Himself through this ever-cycling change. So this change is a direction, this change is a purpose. This change is not a meaningless change. And this again is beautifully described in one of the stories of the Kathopanishad. We'll see very interesting stories in the Upanishads, full of stories. Satyakam Jabali. Then one of these stories in Ayatriya Upanishad about the creation, how it came into existence. Another one, Ajata Shatru and Balaki, where another, we'll see as we go along. So, stories are very tempting. But this story from Kathopanishad. So, the story is that the gods have won a victory over the demons. So, they are enjoying. They say, let's call it a party today. So, nicely they all gather in some mountain, paradise. Let's have a party. So, as they are together, saying, ours is the victory. Ours is the victory. That time, suddenly, the divine, the eternal says, they have done a good job, but they need to be taught a lesson. So he appears on the threshold, and everybody asks, pass identity. He says, I don't carry any identity. Now they are perplexed. So they go inside and report to Indra that, there is somebody who says, I don't have an identity. So Agni is Jat Veda. See, how Agni is Jat Veda? Agni is the third principle. There is so much knowledge to be, shared, but I don't know. Maybe we'll have question answer. So Agni is Jat Veda. It knows all births. Why? Because space is the first condition, elemental condition of matter. Then comes by modifying Vayu. Vayu is in that harmonic etheric space, it modifies it. So there are, like in air, actually Vayu is not this air, but this is a representative image. So in Vayu you see all these tornadoes forming, sometimes it flows smoothly. So they are the first effort to create forms. But it doesn't stay, we all know. So what is required next is the fire element. So fire, electrical element, it begins to, that energy starts bringing it together, coalesce. So fire is the first from where forms begin to emerge. But after fire, they don't remain stable. So you require it to further modify it. Out of fire changes into jala, flow. Begins to get interconnected, and then something which can hold it together, the earth principle. They are the 5 physics forces that we know: weak electricity, strong electromagnetic current, and then of course the gravitational force, which is the Prithvi element. Science is reaching that point. So Indra sends Agni, find out who is he. You have made all. Indra asks him, Agni asks him, who are you? So he says, who are you? First you tell me. आप हमारे घर आए हो, हमसे पूछ रहे हो, आप कौन हो? So Agni says, you don't know, I am Agni. What can you do? I can consume everything. So the Eternal picks up a blade of grass. Says, okay, I won't go by just your saying that I can consume everything. You consume this blade of grass. Agni says, so simple. He rushes with all his force but cannot. So he goes back defeated, scratching his head. Who is this guy? So Indra is also perplexed. He sends Vayu. So Vayu, same dialogue follows, and he says, Vayu says, I am Vayu, I can lift everything up. I can expand, contract. Okay, please show me your power. He tries, he cannot. So then he goes back and says, I can't, I was powerless before him. So he goes back and tells Indra, I don't know. So Indra says, okay, I'll come and see. So Indra comes and he can't even see. The Eternal vanishes. So he chases him. Now you see, all these are also connected to the senses and the gods behind the senses. And Indra is the divine mind. So he tries to chase. Where has he gone? Who was he? And he comes face to face with the Divine Mother, Uma Hemvati. And she says, you know what, Indra? Actually, it was none else but the Eternal who came to tell you, it's not your victory. It is the victory of the Eternal. So what does it mean? How do we practically apply this in life? First thing, as we have another story in the Upanishad, all pride and vain glory are such foolish things to start. Basic lesson. Oh, I did this, oh, I did that. Is so meaningless. Why? Because everything that you do, there is the Nityo Nityanam. It is He to whom all glory belongs. This is a basic. This we all understand. This is a kindergarten level understanding for anybody who wants to take a spiritual life. So in spiritual life, we don't say ma, tu, and have tu, me. In spiritual life, we say ma. Okay, that's the way. Or om, whatever way we want to conceive it. This is the basic ground. Second is, because gods have built godliness, devatva in humanity. And they may think this is the end. But eternal has other things up his sleeve. Things which have not been manifested. So he wants them to understand your work is not over by victory over the demons. There is something else which may come. He doesn't tell them. So why? Because he is eternal. You can't put an end to it. All those who say human beings are the last step in the creation, oh, you must be God to know his plans. They say logically, well, he never acted according to logic. Isn't it? So this logic that creation will stop with man is absurd in the face of it. If there is eternal behind the transient, maybe there is a better transience which is going to come. Such a wonderful thing. Third, when we invoke the eternal again, you see how it empowers us. People talk about women empowerment. All that they mean by women empowerment is imitating men, which is the most, I don't know. Men are not worthy of imitating. They are just worthy of being kept away. That's why you go out, do whatever you want to do. No, I mean it to an extent. It is. Imitating men is the Western idea of women empowerment. हम भी दारू पिएंगे, हम भी सिगरेट पिएंगे, तो हमारे चाल चलन भी मैन जितना गिरा हुआ है वैसे हम भी गिरते जाएंगे. ये कोई एम्पावरमेंट है? एम्पावरमेंट हमारे यहाँ क्या है? और फिर वो कहते हैं लुक एट सीता, बेचारी अबला नारी, लुक सीता नाउ. She has read the Upanishad and lived the Upanishad. So it is her Leela. She has gone deliberately. Ravan couldn't have touched her if she wanted. She puts on a veil, avidyamai, avidyamai. We'll come to that when we talk about Maya, but just that incidence. So one day Ravan comes, says, I have got this Chandrahas, Khadag in my hand. I have already killed Rama. Here is his head, shows magically. And now you come with me. I have tried to lure you into the palace, you have not come. Now I am going to take you by force. People say, oh, Ravan was so nice. नहीं, उसको वेदवती का श्राप था. कोई nice wise नहीं था. तो वो, that's why he didn't come near her. But now he threatens her. So what does Sita do? She picks up a blade of grass. He says, you cross this, then we'll see. He is so afraid. He doesn't dare to cross it. Why? Now this blade of grass becomes a shield. Why? Because she has once again unveiled herself and become one with the eternal feminine. That's how we see Ram, when Jayant comes, pecks on Mata Sita's feet. What does Ram do? All his arrow, bow are inside, he is a Vanvasi, so they are kept. He picks up a trina and sends it towards him. And he goes around seeking help, but he cannot, because at the end he is told by Shivji that you go back and fall at the feet of those feet that you pegged, because only he can take back this arrow. Now what does it mean, this story? Again the same thing. This eternal, when we discover, it empowers us. That is how this mighty civilization was built. People don't understand. They think it was all, okay, we talk about the splendors of that age. Because they got the right thing. The first step was, let us find the source, the origin. That is the supreme power. So Upanishads are, the Vedas, but Upanishads, as I said, are the jnana aspect of the Vedas. It's the third layer or the second layer which has been formed. So they have discovered those essential discoveries it has brought out. But then, as I said, these discoveries also, we read them. We may read the Kathopanishad, have a nice discussion on it, but it will remain veiled, still veiled. Oh, lovely story in the Kathopanishad. So, these were called as Shrutis. Why? Because they are heard. Heard means received by an inner hearing, inspiration, intuition, aparushe. So the Vedic rishis received it as a revelation. So Vedas, in that included the four Ved and the Upanishads, the Brahmanas, the Aranyaks, Samhitas are Shruti. They have been received as revelation. Then based on it, you see how Indian civilization, so there are the Smritis. So Smritis are based on those truths, but they have tried to bring it out in a way we can understand it. So we have the Puranas. Now Puranas, some Puranas are written by sages. So they are considered as authentic Puranas. Why? Because they've unmodified, undiluted Vedic truth is there in them. For instance, the Srimad Bhagavat Puran, Krishna's life, and Vishnu Puran. They are authentic. They are written by seers. Whereas Shiv Puran and Agni Puran, I know Shiva is a great god, but they are not regarded as authentic, that authentic. They have many beautiful truths. The stories are beautiful. But why they are not regarded? Because it was not written by the seers of those times. So this is a different category. And then even then Puranas, the stories are sometimes very fantastic, etc., etc. So we have the Itihasas, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. So Ramayana and the Mahabharata, what do? They are stories, epics. But they are stories which are universally applicable. All the types, human types you will find, especially the Mahabharata. That's why it's called as the fifth Veda. But the same truths are there. But it has taken a different form, more relatable, more connectable. That's why it is said about Mahabharata that what is there in Bharata is there in this Bharata, Mahabharata. And what is not in this Bharata, Mahabharata, is not anywhere else. All the same truths. Dharma is there, Adhyatma is there, of course Krishna is there, everything is there in the Mahabharata. The Gita is there, which is the essence of the Vedas. But it has brought things in a more relatable way. The sacrifice, outward ritualistic sacrifice, becomes the yajna inside, purification, refinement. We see that in the Gita. There is emphasis on yajna, but that yajna, Shri Krishna doesn't say that light up a fire and do it with these mantras. He says, take my name and make the offering. That's how he makes it very simple. So that is how age to age we see the Vedas and the Dharma is lost, and then the avatar comes and revives it. And then since we have come so far, just to complete the picture, finally, for each age there is a revival of the Vedas. So we have Shri Aurobindo, and this for the next coming age he gives us Savitri. So that contains all that you find in the Vedas, the Upanishads, the essence, like the Gita contains. And something new for the future. So this is where the Upanishads stand. There are generally, if you take the number 108, some will say, but 200, maybe more. You may be surprised, Akbar even got one, Allah Upanishad written. So well. Poor fellow was trying to reconcile somehow in the heart, but it didn't work out because the official language still was Persian. So it never could work out. Anyways, so that way if you take account, there are many Upanishads people speak about. But there are 12, some people say 14, some say 10. So let's take na teri na meri, 12. 12 Upanishads are considered as genuine and principal Upanishads. Why? Because they are directly culled from the Vedas. You can actually trace their origin to, Shukla Yajurveda, it's a Krishna Yajurveda, like that. You can trace their origin. So in Veda you will see this Shukla and Krishna. So basically it means that Shukla is that which has not been, which has been well organized and arranged. When you discover those hymns. So that white, and the other is Krishna, the black. They have not been organized well. It's like raw data which has to be organized. So some of the Upanishads come from one of the Vedas, Samved, as I said, Krishna Yajurved, Rigved. They have been culled out from that by the rishis. Some rishis we'll find common to both, Vedas as well as the Upanishads. Some are not common, like Svetashvatar is not a rishi in the Vedas, but the whole Upanishad is his name, Svetashvatar. He is a seer. But it's authentic, it's regarded as one of the 12 principal Upanishads. So these Upanishads have taken out the essential jnana. What does the Veda contains? Tell me in terms of knowledge. It's a wonderful thing, but it had its own disadvantage. You must understand. What was the disadvantage? Now you have started the whole creation and the source and everything is there. So Vedas described it in totality. The Upanishads describe the essence. So over a period of time, and you will see it, people who took to the Upanishads, they started more into meditation, otherworldliness, because now you are picking up the essence, jnana. So they even declared karma is not really necessary beyond a point. Up till you get jnana, karma is needed. Beyond it, you don't need. This is because it is a misconception of the Upanishads, no doubt about it. But this was the logical conclusion that followed. That Upanishads is talking about jnana, the eternal, the one. So see, nityo nityanam can be interpreted both ways. One is all this is anitya, but there is one nitya. But if you interpret the Upanishad in totality, you don't get that meaning, because it is the one who wanted to become many. It is the one who has become the many. So when you look at it in totality, this is not the sense. But people started, I'll take one example, Kena Upanishad. So how does Kena Upanishad, each Upanishad has its own story. So the disciples have gathered together, there is the sage. Upanishad literally means two things. One is sitting at the feet of the master. Sad, to sit. Ni, near or below. And up is below. So Upanishad. And Upanishad also means going into the heart of the inner knowledge. You are going to the essential truth. So that's how Upanishad came into existence. So Kena Upanishad starts with this query. A disciple asks, what a disciple and what a question. He asks, Sire, tell me, what impels thoughts? Now imagine, have we ever asked this question? We keep saying that, I think, according to me, my view, my opinion. How the thought entered into this circle, magic circle, and I say I appropriated it because there is no copyright at those gates. How did I say? I thought, where did it come from? Now you see, this is raised to what level? The Vedic rishis, when they discovered this discovery of thought, how it comes, they even spoke about Navagavahas and Dasagavahas, the layers of thought, starting from the most sensory to the most sublime and that which is beyond the thought. They made these discoveries. They are very profound discoveries. They are actually researches given to us in a platter. But here it's confined to a little narrower thing. And the disciple asks her, where does the thought come from? What impels my thought to reach where it reaches? How does it reach where it reaches? What impels the thought to make speech? So then the rishi starts answering in a cryptic way. They are very beautiful. Of course, mantric, many of these Upanishads are both prose and poetry. But poetry is really marvelous poetry. If nothing else, we should be proud that, at that age people wrote such marvelous poetry. So maybe I can read a little bit of this Kena Upanishad poetry, because it's so, the rhythm, the meter, the way it goes. So he is asked that, tell me about that, from where thought comes. See how the rishi is replying, is amazing. The question is by the disciple, Kene shitam patating preshitang mana, kena prana prathama preti yukta. What impels the breath to move? Kene shita Vachamima vadanti chakshu shotra kaudevo punaruti. What makes my ears to hear? What makes my eyes to see? Brain, sir, that's elementary. And this is a secret. By the way, even today science is struggling. Actually, neurological science is struggling. Why? Because we see a stream of photons impacting the brain. Why it takes this image of you and me? Perception. It's a mystery. So see what development these people had. Why I hear a certain kind of sound as music? What is impacting it? Vibrations. And they are reaching and touching the brain, triggering tung. Why this kind of sound is coming inside me? A very profound question, and its answer has implications. So that the whole thing is consciousness. So today we say consciousness is a byproduct of brain, but no, brain itself is a byproduct of consciousness. So this is how they proceeded. Of course, many scientists now believe that consciousness is embedded within. So he describes so beautifully, Shrotasya Shrotra Manaso Mano Yad Vachoha Vacham Sau Pranasya Prana. The hearing of the hearing, the sight behind the sight, the ear behind the ear. So, beautiful, no? It makes the heart, what a poetry, what a way they are expressing it. And then he says, see, you want to know about that, but I must caution you. What is he cautioning the disciple? Na tatra chakshur gacchati, na vaga gacchati, no mana. You can't see it. I am telling you something about it, and you can't hear it. Your thought cannot reach it. I'm just skipping one after another. And then it gives a practice. And also it says, gives the secret. Yadvachana bhyutitam yena vagya bhyuddate. That which is unexpressed by the word, that by which the word is expressed. And then he says, Tadeva Brahman Tvam Vidhi Nedam Yadidam Upasate. उसको क्या नाम दे रहे हैं? ब्रह्मम. वो है जिसके कारण आप सुन पा रहे हो, जिसके कारण आप देख पा रहे हो, जिसके कारण you are able to speak. Tadeva Brahman Tam Vidhi Nedam Yadidam Upasate. Not this that men worship here. That is, know that to be the Brahman, and not this which men follow after here. So it is giving us first step. If you worship these outer, he is so nicely, that speech, this speech, no. Go to the origin of speech, the origin of sound, origin of word, and empower yourself. Yanman sana manute yenahur manomatang Tadeva Brahman Tvam Vidhi Nedam Yadidam Upasate. That which thinks not by the mind, that by which the mind is thought. Mind cannot think about the ineffable. But yet it can make the mind reveal itself to the mind. But what is the practice required? Tadeva Brahman Tvam Vidhi Nedam Yadidam Upasate. If you think mind is all, you will never reach there. You have to find ways and means, and all that it described here, one after another, to go beyond the mind. Yak chakshusha na pashyati, yena chakshushi pashyati, tadeva brahman tvam vidhi, nedam yadidam upasate. See how metrical, rhythmical, one of the older Upanishads. Just imagine, they are our great grandfathers. Unki santan hai hum. What poetry they wrote, what profound. And so what happens when we read it? Now, obviously, to read it requires a different whole thing altogether. But just imagine, what does it do? It creates a spiritual atmosphere. These mantras have the capacity, just reading them, they have the capacity to create an atmosphere around the mind. They are aphoristic, they suddenly give a shock to the mind and open its windows. Oh, there is something higher, something greater. Take the Isha Upanishad. Isha vasyam idam sarvam yatkincha jagatyam jagat Tena tyaktena bhunjita magridah kasya siddhanam. Just to practice one sloka in life. All this that is here is for the habitation of the Lord. Na tera na mera. Na teri na meri. Beech ki nahi, Bhagwan ki. Let's find that point. See this practice. Ishavasyamidam sarvam. Same thing. Nityo nityanam chetana chetananam. Here he is described as the Lord. Not as a state of consciousness. So, Ishavasyamidam sarvam yat kincha jagatyam jagat. All that is moving individually and universally. All this movement. Why? See the precise description. Jagatyam jagat. Jagatyam, that which is moving. Jagata. Say to Sanskrit hai wonderful. Jagatyam, jagata. Individual motion within universal motion. The atoms to the galaxies. And the thoughts and the feelings. Everything that is moving. Yet, whatever is moving. Yat kincha jagatyam jagat. Tena tyaktena bhunjita. From there comes the principle of renunciation. It never is yours. It belongs to the Lord. So what do? Shall I just not mine, and I be satisfied? No. He says, then by renouncing thou shalt enjoy all things. Tena tyaktena bhunjita magrida kasya svidhanam. Why you want to appropriate? See, there is a difference between enjoying something and appropriating something. That's why one simple exercise with which we will stop. Ever a strong desire seizes us. I have to buy this, I have to buy this. Let's say a dress. Okay. Practice, simple practice. Go to the shop. Look at the dress. Don't buy it. Come back. Go then a second day. Don't buy it. Third day, don't buy it. I can assure you, in less than a week, your desire will pass away. It is a strange thing. And if you buy it, anyways it will pass away because you realize the absurdity of it. So look at the secret of joy, of happiness. What creates an happiness? Desire to appropriate. It doesn't mean throw away things. Be with things. Karna fakiri fir kya dil lagi. If you are on floor, if you are on 7-star, if you are in a comfortable this thing, you don't have to do that. Make a show of renunciation and detachment so that you will be called great. No. It never belonged to you. What are you going to renounce? You have to renounce what belonged to you. It never was yours. So there is no question. All that you have to renounce is this sense that it's mine. It is not yours. It belongs to the divine. Everything belongs to the divine. This is just to give a feel that how beautiful, profound, even each verse is so majestic. And see how they move from one intuition to another. The Rishi is not bothered about explaining, how it belongs to the divine. He is not interested in that. He will go from there to the next. Kurvanne vehe karmani jijivishe chatangsama. So that you don't misinterpret that therefore I should leave things. No. Live 100 years doing verily works in the world. He makes sure that you don't misunderstand. Then he further reinforces so that there is no confusion. Asuryanam te loka pretyabhigachanti. Those who slayer of their souls, they don't complete the curve of destiny, don't take the challenge of life, you have to put in modern language. They go to dark sunless worlds. Those who commit suicide. Dark sun. Why? Because they have not taken the challenge. You can't run away like that. You will have to come back with a much greater challenge. Then it will keep on again and again qualifying. Again and again qualifying. And this way it reconciles this world, and we'll read something about it a little more later. But Isha Upanishad is so magical that many people have, even Shankaracharya, he tried to tweak it. But why? Because it is world affirming. And ultimately Mayavad, what did it do? That's the problem, as I said, this little caveat about reading the Upanishad or the typical traditional Vedantic explanations, not the Upanishads. Upanishads are wonderful. I have heard from people, Ken Upanishad is otherworldly because it says Tadeva Brahman Tvam Vidhi. But when I read it, I felt this is so much this worldly, it gives us the right way. The gods and beyond the gods, to embody the eternal in a body. And then what happens, it even describes how such a person helps the world because he becomes sweet as honey. So anytime you see a person very serious and very grim faced, be sure eternal is not there. Why? Because Raso Vesaha. What is he? He is embodiment of Ananda, of sweetness. And such a person, whatever he does, wherever he goes, whatever he speaks, automatically radiates and spreads it into the world. How beautiful way it gives us to live. I would have forgotten the time. I'll take a break. I think we have a break right now, and then come back at whatever time. I don't know. I don't have any format in mind. But I do hope at least tomorrow to take up Sri Arvind Upanishad. This is a wonderful book. But meanwhile, we'll try to just touch from here and there, maybe a couple of stories, couple of profound utterances, a little bit here and there. It's a vast subject. So, Kshir Sagar में एक जगह से क्यों सभी घाट का थोड़ा थोड़ा पानी पी ले. And most importantly, I would very much appreciate if we have questions, every day, whenever you wish to, because it will open a wide field. Questions need not be confined to Upanishads. It can be anything under the sun, because so that we have a wide field open to us. Okay.